This is an ice cream. I went to McDonald's. They gave me a huge ice cream. I guess to make up for all the trouble from last week. Hi y'all. Just finished my ice cream. That thing was huge. Well, I was gonna tell a story time today, but also I was gonna talk a little bit about the weather, one of my favorite subjects. It's been so mild here. It's been like in the 70s. I think it was like in this maybe high 70s today. I don't even remember. It's been so nice and just so mild, and usually it would be in the 90s, 90, 95, very hot, extremely hot weather here, but we're having all this cool weather, and it's been raining for the last 3 days, I guess, three or 4 days, and I see some rain. There's clouds coming in here. It's a little bit sunny here now. It's kind of dark in here, but yeah, I'm parked under a tree, but there's a little bit of sun on this side, but there's all dark clouds coming in. They're rolling in on this side. And up in the north west, it's like baking. Like Oregon had a temperature, I think, of 117 degrees. And that's like really high for them up there. I mean, it's not so unusual down in the, I guess, in the middle to the lower part of Texas, or in like Nevada, around Arizona, and parts of Southern California. They get really hot, but that kind of temperature up there, I mean, it's just, I looked at the map, and it's kind of like going, there's like this weird little path of air that's going through. It's going up to the northwest, and it's like in this, I think they call it a heat dome, and it was coming down a little bit further west, or southwest, I guess. But amazingly, we've been having like the most mild weather that I can ever remember in a June. It's almost fixing to be July, and it's usually really hot by this time. And we've already had our little heat wave of over 100 degrees. Like, I think it was like 3 or 4 days at least of over 100 degrees. And then it was like in the 90s and whatnot. But this past few days, it's been so nice. I just love it. I wish it would stay like this, but after this passes, it's going to go back up into the high 90s again. So, oh well. Well, my story time today is about, it's kind of a strange subject. When I was 18, I moved out on my own, and I lived with roommates in an apartment, and then I lived by myself in an apartment, and then years later, I got my first house. I rented a house, and I love living in a house better than an apartment. I can't stand apartments. I hate them because of all it's like you have no privacy, and the parking problems, and I really don't like workmen coming in my house, and especially since I have dogs, or in my apartment. I mean, when they would spray for bugs or do whatever they do, do general maintenance or whatever, and they would come in your house, when you're not there, and I don't like that at all. I really value my privacy, and I don't like people, having access to my house or anything like that. And when I lived in these one apartments, I had an issue with a maintenance man. I know it was a maintenance man. I came home one day, and my underwear drawer was pulled open, and there was a pair of my underwear, like, just laid out perfectly on top. And I was like, I know I didn't do that, because I have a little OCD, and in that apartment I have everything specifically, in order, and there's just no way I did that. And I think I mentioned it to the landlord, or the what do you call the rental, the apartment manager, whatever. And I think she said that it might have been one of the maintenance men that she was kind of having some complaints or something. And there was nothing wrong with my apartment. I remember there's nothing specifically, but they would go in there occasionally to spray, and I just didn't like that because I had a little weenie dog at that time. And so I was lucky enough to eventually move, and years later I did get this house. And I was a very petite person. I actually went through a growth spurt in my early 20s where I grew like about 3 or at least 3 or 4 inches, I think. I think I was about 4'11" when I graduated high school. And I was very small, very petite. And I think sometimes that kind of drew people. I think they just thought of me really as like a little, like a very young person, young child almost. And I would get a lot of comments about little girl, being called little girl and stuff like that. And this is when I was living on my own, working 2 jobs, paying for my own car, my own everything. I paid for everything by myself. And it kind of really didn't bother me because I know I've even been told by a relative one time that they came to pick me up somewhere. I think my car broke down or something, and they passed by me, and I, tried to get their attention, and they finally came back or something, and they said, "Oh, I thought you were a little boy standing on the curb with your hat or something." I don't know. But I was very, very small, very petite, and I think that kind of made people think I was like vulnerable or something. I don't know. I really don't know what they were thinking, but that's the only way I can think in my mind, because I ended up being well, when I lived in this one house, I had these new neighbors, or they weren't new. I was the new neighbor. And when I moved in, the lady brought me, I think, a casserole or something. I can't really remember what it was. And I was like, "Oh, thank you." I thought it was really nice, really sweet. And then she brought me, I think a few days later, like some muffins or something. And then it got to be like very regular, constantly. And then she would constantly question me and ask me questions and come over. If I was doing something, her and her husband would come over. And it got to be kind of annoying. I'd be doing my yard work, and I did it by myself. And I actually owned a small lawn service at the time, and they didn't know that. And I don't know how they didn't know. I had my trailer, parked behind my car, and he came over. "Oh, we can't be having you do this. You don't need to be doing this," and trying to like take over or something like that. And then I'd tell him, no, I don't like people doing things for me. I don't like, no. And it would be like a struggle sometimes to kind of get them to leave my house or my property. And it got to be very like kind of controlling. There's so many little things that they did that were very weird. One day I had a package on the porch, and she lived across the street, like 3 or 4 houses down. She came over to my house, picked the package up, and took it to her house. And I didn't know about it because I worked 2 jobs. And then I guess it was like about 2 days later when she finally knocked on the door, and she was, "You're such a hard person to get hold of, and I really need your number," And I didn't want to give out my phone number because they were already too like imposing. And she had a package in her arms, and she said, "This came for you a few days ago, but I couldn't get a hold of you." And I was like, "You took that off my porch?" I said, "That's a felony. That's like stealing mail. It's my mail." And she just looked at me like all offended, and I was like, "Please don't do that again." It had the address of what it was from or something. I can't remember. It was something like a Tupperware dish or something. I don't know, something that I just ordered. I can't even remember what it was. It was not important, but it was, my mail. And she started questioning me, "Well, what's in it?" I've been like trying to shake it to see what was in my mail. There was one day where she came over to get a dish that she had made a casserole or something in, and it was like a glass. It was a really nice dish with the lid and everything. And I remember whenever she gave it to me, she told me, "Well, whenever you finish it, give it back to me, okay, and I'll refill it." And I was like, oh no, which I fed most of it to my dogs, honestly, because I like to cook for myself. I like my own food. But she came over one day and she knocked on the door and I kind of opened the door and she tried to she put her arm in there to open it and I caught the door. I said, I have dogs. You can't just come in my house. She was just going to walk in my house. And she didn't know that. I had a big, he was a pit bull, American bulldog cross, and he had this massive head. And he was really quiet. He was black, kind of very light golden brindle. He was a beautiful, beautiful dog. But he was very well trained. He was very quiet. But if she would have came in the house, I don't know if he would have he probably would have jumped on her or maybe tried to snap at her. And because he could tell, how tense I was. And then I also had a German Shepherd Doberman mix who was very, very nippy. She wasn't real mean or anything, but she was really neurotic. Like super neurotic, most neurotic dog I've ever had. And at one point they were in the backyard and I guess she had told her husband about my dogs. And one day I think I was cleaning the back alleyway or something and he came around. And mind you, he lived across the street, like 3 or 4 houses down. Instead, I lived on the second house to the corner, like they're down here and I live down here. So he somehow went around the alleyway, I guess, walked, from his house down there, and I was cleaning up or doing something. I kind of had the gate cracked a little bit, but I had it closed where the dogs couldn't get through. But he came up kind of behind me and kind of startled me, and he yelled, "What are you doing back here?" Just like nosy, just, trying. They constantly were watching to see what I was doing and tried to find a way to see what they could, how they could fit in or get in, or I don't know what their plan was or what their deal was, but I told him, don't stop. My 2 dogs are in the backyard and they don't like men. And he goes, oh yeah, I was kind of wanting to talk to you about your dogs, they seem kind of mean. Are you sure? He tried to start a conversation with me about whether or not I should have dogs like that or something. I don't know, and I think it kind of threw him off that I had these 2 big dogs that, there's no way they could get in my house and they couldn't trespass in my backyard. So I think they were real disappointed about that part. So that's another reason why I have dogs. They always are kind of a deterrent to people like invading your space, and also just keeping me safe anyway. That's the way I really love my dogs, and that's one of the main reasons. They're very loyal, and that's why I have dogs like that. And then one day I was cleaning out the garage, and she came over, and her daughter came over with her. I never met her daughter before in my life. And they had on like t-shirts, and like she said, well, we put on old t-shirts. We came over to help. We saw you moving all this stuff around, and oh, you don't need to be doing this by yourself. And it was just really just controlling and annoying, and one time I had a issue with my gate. It was like an old gate, and I didn't use it. As on one side of the house, and I had another gate on the other side. And I usually use that one, but I also wanted to be able to use this one. It was bigger and it was wider, and it didn't work very good. So I was working on it myself, and I was very small, but I was able to lift it up, and I kind of got the hinges or something. There was something wrong with them. And I had to clean them up with the WD-40, and I was trying to work on it, and I was almost done with it, and she came running across the street, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Don't you lift that?" And I don't know, just yelling all kinds of stuff. And I mean, it really unnerved me, shocked me, and I turned around real quick because I didn't know it sounded like something horrible was happening. And she ran over to me and kind of grabbed onto my arm or my shoulder and kind of almost spun me around, and I can't remember her husband's name. And, "He'll be over here in just a minute. You don't do that." And just, almost yelling at me. And that just really, really upset me. Really kind of, I was like, no, I don't want him coming over here. I don't want you coming over here. And I kind of just went off on her a little bit. And she just was real offended by it and real upset. And I was like, I told her, I'm kind of a private person. I don't like people coming over, and she'd already questioned me about, boyfriend, husband, how old am I, where I work, and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was just really, I don't like stuff like that. I don't like for like neighborhood people or people I don't know, especially coming over and just kind of like ingratiating themselves or imposing themselves in my life. I've never liked that. It's okay, I think, for you to maybe bring something over to a new neighbor or something like that. Hello, hi, how are you? And, introduce yourself or something like that. But when you start like trying to get into their personal business and questioning them, and these people are strangers, when they first meet you, and for a person to start, for you to start questioning them, that's very, it's inappropriate, I think even more so nowadays, I think because of the way the world is nowadays. And I've had so many incidents like that at work. I've had incidents with, it's usually with an older woman, and maybe like, I don't know how many times I've had problems like that with older women, and them bringing either their husband or their son up to work to meet me, and they've told them all, I've told them all about you and stuff like that, and I'm like, that's kind of like very creepy to me. I just don't like that at all. And I know they probably are harmless, but I've had a few weird incidents where people tried to like get me to get in the car, leave my car at work, and go with them, and I can't even count how many times weird stuff like that has happened to me. So I don't know why, but I think because I looked so young, I was so petite, and I think it just drew looked like a vulnerable, like I had a vulnerability or something. Like they thought they needed to take care of me or do something, I don't know, like that. Some kind of, I don't know, some kind of nurturing or feeling like that from people like that. That's what I really think. But it was also a little bit of a creep factor in there too. And there's been incidents even when I moved here in this small town, I had several neighbors that were like calling other neighbors to ask them, what am I doing? Why does she have that? Who's at their house? I had a relative drive up to my house, and one of the neighbors called the neighbor across the street and started saying, they're at her house doing something to her. And he called me saying, so-and-so told me there's something wrong going on. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, I don't know. He really wasn't comfortable calling or telling me. He's trying to respect my privacy because I had already kind of mentioned some stuff like that going on with some of the other neighborhood ladies. And it kind of boiled over a little bit. Some things happened, and they kind of used this guy for like information funnel about me, because I wouldn't answer my phone when they would call, and it was just a very weird situation. And so he kind of stopped taking their calls, or kind of told them, why don't you ask her yourself, or he got very annoyed being the middleman of it. And I just think situations like that are just a little too invasive, and I don't like stuff like that. And, whatever I tell people is what I allow them to know. And especially like nosy neighbors, I just it's just such a strange feeling to have, when you try to go outside and walk your dog or do something like that, and they're all watching you or something weird like that, and then they call another neighbor to ask, what was she doing out there? I'm letting my dog take a crap, Okay, well, that's it for this story time, and I'll be back later. Bye.